Hi and welcome to the Baby Sleep Magic podcast. My name is Chantal Murphy, and in today's episode I'm just going to be giving you some tips on daycare and what to do in the event your little one is about to go to daycare, what to do in the event your little one is already at daycare, and also what to do in the event your little one comes home from daycare and has either restless nights or you just have a really long and hard afternoon. So first of all, my first few tips, if your little one hasn't yet started daycare and it's on the radar and it's something that you're starting to think about, when it gets to the point when you've decided which daycare to go to, my advice, if you've got the option, is to try and arrange some play dates first. So that means you go there with them, and generally most daycare providers are more than happy to do this, and you stay there with your little one for whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or even an hour, sometimes 2 hours if you're really lucky, and just arrange a little bit of a play date with them so your little one becomes familiar with the environment, with the people, with the other children, and it just can help with that transition stage. And if you can do that maybe once a week, twice a week for a couple of weeks in a row before they even begin to start daycare, that can definitely work and help to your advantage. My other tip would be when your little one starts going back to daycare, whether it's after holidays or whether it's from the beginning, from the get-go, you may want to try and do half days if it's possible. If you've got the opportunity and you're not going back to work and it's something that you can use or control, half days will probably help, especially if your little one's young, because generally they won't nap that amazing at daycare to begin with. And if you can get them to come home, they can do a really busy half a day at daycare and they can become really busy and stimulated and interactive, and then you can pick them up, if you got the opportunity, half day to take them home to have their really good nap. And like I said, that can only work for some people, but if you've got the opportunity, that can definitely help for the younger children. My other tip would be to take a comforter. So whether that's a favourite teddy or a little lovey that they've bonded with sleeping, or some type of blanket or wrap, or some type of something from home that's got ideally your smell, their smell, and something they may even sleep with. Some daycare providers are a little bit funny when it comes to that, but even if you take it and put it in their bag, and if they have a little bit of a sookie moment when you drop them off, or they just might need that through the day, not necessarily to sleep with, but it just might be their little creature of comfort that they go to when you're not around. So having something like that with them at daycare is definitely going to help. Make sure whatever you do take, you've got a replica of it at home, because if it gets lost or broken or torn or whatever at daycare, you want to have your backup available at home, or even if you've forgotten it for that particular day or night, or it goes home in someone else's bag, you've got a backup at home. Another tip might be, if you've got the opportunity, is to collect them early. Again, that's only available for some parents, but if you can, it might be wise to collect them early, because they're knackered. They've had really big days, they're very busy, they get a lot of interaction. Like I said earlier, they don't necessarily sleep the best at daycare. So if you can collect them early, that will help. But also be prepared for them to become tired and overtired. When they're at daycare, they're busy, they're interacting, they're active, they're stimulated, and they are full of learning. So they're going to come home, and more often than not, they're going to be extremely tired, especially for the younger bubbers, and possibly overtired, because in some cases they just don't nap the best there, and therefore they can come home and be more than ready to go to bed by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So just prepare yourself for that. My other big tip is, when they're at daycare, whether you're providing the food or not, is to ensure that the daycare carers are really on top of the food and drink. This is probably one of the red flags that I get from a lot of my clients, and something they realise is a bit of a pattern that happens when their kids go to daycare. Those nights tend to be the nights that their little one wakes up the most, and it's either generally related back to the food and the drink from during the day. So, daycare providers are amazing. They do an amazing job, but they've also got a lot of children to look after as well. So if that's a pattern that you're finding, that your little one on daycare days is waking up more frequently at night, it could be just as simple as just mentioning it to them so they're mindful of it and they're more aware of it, and they can just offer more water or offer a little bit more food on those days, because children at daycare are very busy and distracted, and sometimes they don't eat because they're too busy. They want to go off and play, and the last thing they want to do is sit there and eat. So if you, like I said, if that's something that you're finding is a reoccurring pattern, it just might be worth mentioning to them, because I've never had a client that has mentioned it to them and it's ever been an issue. They're always more than happy to, help out and assist where they need to. So, on long days, if your little one is doing long days at daycare, what you might want to do, if the opportunity's there, is ask daycare to offer your little one dinner. And now this might be something you need to provide. Most cases it is. But if your little one isn't getting picked up till 4:30, 5 o'clock on some days, in some cases, depending of the age of the child, your little one, by the time they get home and you've prepped dinner and you've gotten out of the car and you've just had that whirlwind getting home time, it's just chaos. And if you can avoid that by getting daycare to give them dinner between 4 and 4:30, then what you need to do when you get home is bath them and give them a top up. And that top up might be toast, it might be a porridge, it might be a Weet Bix, it might be some dinner from the night before that you've got to just blitz up. But at least they're not going to be absolutely tonguing for when you get through the door. And hopefully the biggest part of the meal has been dealt with at daycare. So then when you get home, you can spend a little bit more quality time rather than just this whirlwind battle, stressful situation that you find yourself in at, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon or evening in that case. So, that's my tips when it comes to daycare. And at the end of the day, what happens at daycare stays at daycare. If they're getting patted to sleep, or they're getting rocked to sleep, or they're getting nursed or bum tapped, or they're only doing 20-minute naps there, it's not going to impact what happens at home or what might happen at Nan and Pop's house. They generally, once they get to a certain age, and generally around 6 months plus, they know the difference where they are, and they know what happens at daycare stays at daycare. So if they're getting, a little bit of extra nurturing there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it at home or follow through with what daycare's doing at home. Not at all. So hopefully those tips help when it comes to whether you're starting daycare or you've got a little one at daycare or even at kindy. It can be a big transition for some children, and it's obviously busy times for everyone, and it can also come along with a bit of stress as well. So hopefully these tips can alleviate any concerns you might have, any questions you might have around it. So feel free to share this with another mum or a friend, especially if you've got someone who they're going to be starting daycare shortly. These tips might help them as well. I will see you in the next podcast.